Our next thread of the day is titled Stay-at-Home Mom, feeling so attached to baby that I don't trust anyone else with her. I'm a first-time mom and I'm wondering if how I'm feeling is normal. I've never been apart from my baby since the day she was born. The longest time I spent not with her is if my husband is watching her while I try to sleep. My mom has come to our house a handful of times and watched her for maybe an hour, so I could go to a doctor's or a dentist appointment. Even when my husband watches her, it's typically so I can do things like eat my dinner, take the dog out, or shower. It's gotten to the point where I have trouble trusting him when he's on baby duty because a lot of the time I feel like she isn't getting his full attention or much attention at all. He relies on her to entertain herself with her being in her chair or her pack and play with toys. There have been 2 times where he was on baby duty and accidentally fell asleep. Normally this wouldn't matter considering it would be overnight or early morning hours, but the baby has woken up and he hasn't heard her fussing or crying. Then I've woken up from upstairs in the bedroom and my heart is racing and I feel panicked. It worries me that I feel like the only way I know for sure that she is well taken care of and safe and happy is if she is with me. I plan on getting a part-time job at some point in the future and I'm scared that baby and I will both have trouble being away from one another. Anyone else struggling? This sounds to me quite unhealthy. That's truly my very first response to it. I think that there is a certain amount of, hey, you know, I'm needed, my baby needs me, I want to be around my baby. I don't want to let go of my baby for really long periods of time. That I completely understand. So for example, if I were to be away for a full like 24 hours, a whole day, or a whole week, or any other period of time beyond that is completely inconceivable to me, then I understand where this is coming from. But to not be able to leave her for a couple of hours and to also feel so anxious when the dad is watching her, I think those are 2 signs that this is not great. If the dad is only watching her for things like eating her dinner, taking the dog out, or showering, then each of those events is maybe like half an hour, maximum an hour long. Fair enough. That's at least she's still going to doctor's appointments and she's still taking the dog out and so on. This is not good though. There should definitely be longer periods of time where the dad watches her throughout the day, ideally, and the level of anxiety that she has about it is really not healthy. The point about him not giving her his full attention is also actually completely fine. Babies don't need attention 100% of the time, and it's good for them to learn to play by themselves and to occupy themselves every now and then. So this is not a terrible parenting style. If your parenting style is that you are, sitting in front of your baby and playing with them actively every single moment that they're awake, then this is exhausting for both you and your baby. At some point, your baby has to know how to occupy themselves as well. And you can see, when they're a year old or 2 years old, if they're really so dependent on you for attention and for entertainment all the time, that's not going to be a good situation for either of you. So there's that aspect to it. The other aspect, though, that I think is very different, like there's a huge difference between he leaves the baby to play by themselves and he falls asleep when he's looking after the baby and then the baby is crying. That is a problem. That would be a pretty severe problem for me in terms of you can't really watch a baby if you're asleep. Now, if the baby is also asleep and, they both fall asleep, then it's fine. But if you just leave the baby to play in a corner of the room and then you go and you crash accidentally on the sofa, then that's pretty bad childcare there. So that I would talk to him about. The other part of this response that's completely over the top is this when she says, I've woken up from upstairs in the bedroom and my heart is racing and I feel panicked. Now, some aspect of motherhood, and I do think this is biological, is that when you hear your baby cry, you get really stressed out. This happened to me quite a lot early on in my postpartum period because it's just knee-jerk reaction, right? Especially if you go nap and then you're napping and you can hear the baby crying and you immediately wake up and you can hear the baby crying. Like that's not a very good mental state to be in. There is definitely a biological urge that's like, hey, I need to go get my baby and see what's happening. But it shouldn't last months and it shouldn't stop you from being able to rationalize with yourself and go, hey, okay, you know what? If there really is a problem, her dad will bring her to me. If I'm needed, then it's going to be okay. Her dad is there and he can make the decision himself of saying, all right, this is a good time to bring her to her mother. So OP, I think some element of what you're feeling is probably natural, but it seems to me like it's a little bit overboard. Sounds a little bit like too much anxiety for me. And so if I were you, I would try to work on finding short periods of time that I go away from the house, where I'm completely away from the baby, where I can't watch how the dad is interacting with her, and at the very, very least get comfortable with having him look after her, then try to get comfortable with another person spending time with her, and so on. Just really build up slowly. This level of fear that you have will definitely, like if you don't start working on it before you have to work, you're going to really struggle. And I think a baby will probably struggle as well. The comments, I would say, generally speaking, back me up here. A lot of people say this. The first person says, this sounds like postpartum anxiety. I would talk to your provider and try to find a therapist. A lot of people do say, I feel the exact same way. I could have written this. And so I think some element of it is pretty much universal to the experience of motherhood. One person here goes on a longer story about trying to drop her baby off at daycare. She says, the first day she was there, I was basically glued to the camera. But with each day that went by, that she was happy when I picked her up and she slept well and was happy at drop-off, my nerves subsided. No, there's no one on the planet, dad included, that cares for a baby like their own mother, even other mums. You can just read baby better than anyone else. That being said, it doesn't mean that other people can't care for her perfectly well and keep her safe and happy. It's just an adjustment, and the more you leave her with your mum or husband, the easier it gets. Exactly. So it's just definitely some element of it is practice and just taking a little bit of time and doing it. And maybe it's worth also thinking about it from the perspective of that you cannot expect or wish for your baby to want to only ever be comfortable with you and only you all the time, right? Baby needs relationships with other people in her life as well, and therefore other people in her life need to be capable of looking after her, and she needs to be happy, capable of being happy around them too. And all of that just takes time and a little bit of practice. The next comment says, I feel the same way, except I do trust my husband with her and feel at ease when he has her. But anytime anyone else is holding her, it makes me incredibly anxious and uneasy, especially if someone tries to leave the room with her. I have to be able to see her at all times when she's with someone else besides my husband. I'm also a first-time mom who stays home to care for her. I've only been away from her for 2 hours. I don't really care if people think it's not normal. I'm listening to my motherly instincts. I would rather be a little overprotective while she's dependent on me rather than be too carefree and let something happen to her because her father or I were not there. She won't need me forever, and I genuinely love being there for her and being her everything right now. Call me selfish too, but I don't want to share her with anyone but her father. She's growing too fast. I don't want to miss anything. Now, I find this really sad. I kind of really disagree with this. I don't think that this is normal. And I know she says, I don't care if people think it's not normal. I'm listening to my motherly instincts. Now, I am also a very firm believer in listening to your motherly instincts because I do think that your instincts will usually guide you right. That said, this is within a normal realm of behavior. Listening to your motherly instincts to me does not mean going with every emotion that you feel, going max, like every single little thing that you're anxious about, being like, all right, cool, that's fair. I'm going to continue being super neurotic and controlling over this thing so I can control my anxiety. I don't think that this is what motherly instincts are about. I would try to separate those two things out for myself, at least. So for me, the moment that you are anxious and you're living with anxiety and that anxiety is at a point that's a little bit unreasonable and you're a little bit controlling with it, this is a huge sign that you can't just follow what your natural urges are in this situation because it's not healthy for you and it's not healthy for your baby and it's not going to be healthy for your family in the long run. So I get where she's coming from in terms of, hey, I'm for as long as she's dependent on me, I really want to be there with her and be there for her. But it's not, this isn't good. If anyone else is holding her, it makes me incredibly anxious and uneasy. That's not a good sign. That's not a good thing. That's how I would deal with this particular situation. I hope that anyone else who experiences something similar has a bit of an easier time kind of learning to let go slowly. It's not good when mothers are too controlling over their kids. It's really, really unhealthy, especially for the mother. But I don't think it's very healthy for the kid either, who then learns to be even more dependent over time when they could be so much more independent at a much earlier age and capable of doing so much more by themselves if that dependence wasn't reinforced repeatedly by the mother's behavior.